Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, March 31st. It's the end of Q1. Can you believe that? Feels like it was New Year's just yesterday. So if you're not a quarter of the way to your yearly goal, now is a good time to take stock. I think I mentioned this last week in our broadcast, but take stock of where you're at, what you need to do, what's been working, what hasn't been working, and get some help. There are professional coaches and trainers who can work with you. Your manager should be able to help you. Talk to other salespeople and get advice, but you don't want to wait till the end of Q4 to realize that you're not going to make it. At that point, it's too late. You've still got 3/4 of a year that you can turn things around if things aren't going great for you. So get to it now, my friends. As you know, or as many of you know, I'm a sales coach and trainer. I work with both individuals and organizations internationally to help them achieve measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I founded the Sales Pro Network to elevate the profession of sales, to make a place where sales people can come hang out and network with each other, ask questions, get great advice. And if you've been with us at all for a while, every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, we either do a live training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. And once again, my friends, I came through for you. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Phillip Humm. Phillip is a TEDx speaker, which I'm very impressed with, and he's the founder and principal at Power of Storytelling. Good morning, Phillip.
Hey, Jeff. Good to be here.
Great to have you, my friend. Maybe could we start out with you giving us a little bit about your background, maybe the 2 or 3 minute version of what brought you up to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. So background, you started off as a consultant at Bain & Company, then moved to Uber as a product manager. Now, Uber let go of 30% of the workforce pretty much 3 years ago. And when that happened, my first reaction was like, what am I going to do right now, right? I was looking at all these different jobs, applied already for these million other jobs. I actually already had an offer in my hand. But when I then looked at this offer, I thought, wait a second, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life, right? I mean, I found my job okay, but I wasn't particularly, let's say, passionate about it. And I thought, hey, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? And then I thought, you know what? Let me use that chance right now to try out something completely different. And so I did. I took tons of acting classes, tons of improv classes, stand-up comedy, and then storytelling. When I went to these storytelling classes, what I noticed is, first, I'm actually not that bad at this. Second, the courses, the classes that I see that are out there, they're very theoretical. They're very much like given by teachers, not really business people. And I thought, hey, I can do that better. And so I just went all in. I took tons of courses, interviewed 71 sales leaders on sales storytelling. And then my first workshop I actually gave for Google. They liked it so much that they invited me for another 3 workshops. And that's how I pretty much got started.
Google, not a bad first client.
Yeah, it was lucky first client, but paid off at the end.
That's great. And you have a book that just came out, I think, last week, right? Called The Power of Storytelling.
It's called The Story Selling Method, but yes.
Oh, so close. Now, I read it, so I should have known. It's a terrific book. I'm really excited. We're going to talk about that. By the way, I forgot to mention, if you're watching us live, please say hello in the comments. If you're watching us live on Facebook, but you have not connected your account to StreamYard, it's not going to have your name. It's just going to say Facebook user. So please put your name in there. And if you have any questions for Phillip during the interview, please put those in the comments and I'll make sure to pass them on. And finally, if you're watching us on the replay, please put replay in the comments. Good morning, Bruce Kasserman. Brian Keith McNeil, the confidence coach. Somebody says, father of Beach Pug. Good morning. Yes, I have a dog. He's the Beach Pug. There's a story for you. And cheers from down under. Great question. Let's hang on. We're going to show you this one. I don't know who this is, but cheers from down under. Great question, Phil. That question changes everything. Okay, so let's go with some of the questions that I have for you. How do you define storytelling? I mean, are you like Dr. Seuss? Can anybody be a good storyteller?
So I gotta admit, I don't know who Dr. Seuss is, Jeff.
Oh, goodness. So Dr. Seuss was a children's book author. Everything rhymed. He was very popular when I was a child, which was a million years ago. He's probably got, 20 or 30 or maybe more books, The Cat in the Hat and things like that. So, but he's a storyteller.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I don't know him that much, but yes, I help a lot of companies tell their stories, hopefully a little bit more effectively. I'm always a little bit timid about saying something like, I'm the Dr. Seuss, or I'm the king, or I'm the grandmaster of storytelling, because I always feel that there's a lot of ego involved if I would call myself something like that.
Got it. So my question is really, can anyone be a good storyteller?
Yes. So on that one, I had an interesting experience a couple of months back. I went to the reunion of my MBA and that I did at Columbia University in New York. And at that reunion, one of the guys, he walks up to me and he asked me, "So, Philip, what are you up to today?" I'm like, uh, "I'm a business storytelling coach." He's like, "Huh, really? Somehow didn't see you as a business storytelling coach." Ouch, that hurt. But to be fair, he was kind of right. Back then, let's say still at Columbia a couple of years back, I was a terrible storyteller, even worse public speaker. But yes, so why am I telling this? Yes, because anyone can become good at that. With the right techniques, the right coaching, with the right mindset, you can easily become a mesmerizing storyteller.
Got it. By the way, that was Katie Karlovitz who said father of Beach Bug. Brian is the sales confidence coach. He said he loves that you interviewed 71 sales leaders. I think he's probably wondering why he wasn't one of them. And we have a question from somebody who's saying, "Where did Philip grow up? You have an interesting accent. Where did you grow up, and where do you live now?"
Yeah, I'm from Germany, so I grew up in Germany, and right now I live in the Netherlands. But my accent is pretty much all over the place because I worked in Germany, I worked in Brazil, I worked in Chile, I studied in the States for 2 years, so it's a little bit messed up.
Got it. And I have to share a quick story because I always chat for a few moments with the guests before we got on, and I said, "Philip, so any presidents in your country get indicted yesterday?" And he said, "What do you mean?" So he was completely unaware of what's going on here in America. With I think there's either a Chinese, I'm pretty sure it's a Chinese toast that says, "May you live in interesting times." Boy, oh boy, do we live in interesting times here. And good morning, Jason Collins, one of my favorite salespeople and favorite bass players in one of my favorite bands, the Floyd Nation, which is a Pink Floyd cover band. I'm a lover of Pink Floyd and lover of that band. So, what makes a great story, Philip?
hmm So I'd actually like to introduce here a cheesy acronym. I know everyone loves acronyms. So a great story is here to serve. Now, what does serve stand for? S, surprising. So there must be something that breaks that typical pattern of what is expected, something that the listeners didn't see coming. Surprising. E, emotional. So anything that touches us a little bit emotional, where the other people can connect with you. Are relatable. We should see ourselves in your story. So it has to be relatable. V, visual. We should almost see the story in front of our eyes. It should be as if the story was happening to us. And then last one, edited. Most stories are way too long, especially for business stories. It has to be edited. It has to be refined. It has to be super short so that it's actually be delivered with impact. So just to summarize, serve. I hope everyone got this.
If not, you can watch it on the replay.
Awesome.
Can just about anything be made into a compelling story, or is it only certain things?
Now that's the beauty about it, right? I know when I started off with the storytelling, I always thought like, I need to tell these crazy stories how I know passed completely out or had this near-death experience. What I learned, no, you don't need that. Today, I find it much more compelling if I just take a super small moment and turn that into a beautiful story. How I spilled some coffee over my shirt today or so. These are really the beautiful moments, but also the relatable moments that anyone can identify with. If I tell you, I almost died climbing Mount Everest, you're like, cool, interesting. I don't think that I was in an experience like that. So yeah, focus on relatable stuff, right?
Now, if you told me you almost died climbing Mount Everest, I definitely would want to hear the story. But what you just said is not enough. It's certainly enough to get me to want to know more. And
Mhm.
I think the point about anything being made into a compelling story is a solid one. My mentor in the speaking and training business, his name is Steve Bookbinder. He's a brilliant sales trainer and one of the smartest guys I know. And he always tells great stories. And years ago, I was on the phone with him on a Sunday, and I said, "How do you come up with these stories? You're so good. They're so engaging, and you suck me in from like the first minute. How do you do it?" He said, "Well, you can tell a story about anything." I'm like, "No, you can't." He goes, "Here, try this on. I'm sitting in my dining room talking to you right now, and I'm watching my neighbor next door mow the lawn." And
Mhm.
20 minutes later, he had sucked me into this story about his neighbor mowing the lawn. And
Mhm.
I didn't even realize I was being, like dragged in because he's such a great storyteller. Um, clearly he knows how to structure a story. And in the book, you lay out a structure. What is the 4-step method for structuring a story?
Yeah, the 4-step structure that I use, or that I wouldn't say come up, because I just merge a few structures together and find whatever works for me the best, but consists of context, challenge, response, and result. And so what does that entail? Context is very much about giving some rough context. Where and when does it take place? Who's the main character, and what is the main character up to? These are 2 to 3 sentences. That's it. Pretty much every story that I share usually start like this. I say, hey, October 2021, I'm in my apartment in Amsterdam doing X, Y, Z. That's pretty much standard start of any story that I do. Once you have given some rough context about where the story takes place, who's involved, you want to move quickly into the most important part of any story. And that is the challenge. What is the challenge that the main character faces, right? That can be any type of challenge. That can be a physical challenge, an emotional challenge, a difficult decision, another person, whatever it is. It has to be major or substantial to the main character. Again, if you want to have the spilling the coffee over yourself and make drama out of that, that's your challenge. Pick something relatable, right? That's the part where you go deep into the emotions. Now, once you've introduced the challenge, most stories as well then talk about, okay, what is the response to that challenge, right? So 3rd step, response. What are the actions, reactions, decisions taken to overcome that challenge? I know in real life, oftentimes, a lot of different things happen, right? We have a problem and we try a million things to overcome that problem. Well, focus on 1 or 2 things that really move the needle. Otherwise, it will just become too long. And then last one is result, right? How does it turn out at the end? What is the result of that story? And that is this outcome, right? If you're in a sales role, that could be your client walking up to you and saying, wow, Jeff, thank you so much for the consulting that you did on this project. With your help, we just increased our sales by, I think, 30% this month. Thank you, right? The result at the end. What is the change that we see? So that's it, really 4 steps: context, challenge, response, and result.
Love that. As you were talking about that, I was relating it to comedy. I know you took a lot of comedy courses when you were developing your methodology, and I do stand-up comedy. And I was thinking about one of my favorite comedians. His name is Anthony Jeselnik. I was thinking about a particular joke he tells about his next door neighbor. So he sets it up by, I have a next door neighbor who's old and his wife died, and he comes to my door every day. And it's really a story about Alzheimer's, and I don't want to give away the joke. It'll take too long anyways, but he does all those things. He sets the context. Here's what's going on. Here's where we are, what the challenge is, which is that the guy knocks on his door every day looking for his dead wife. Anthony's response to it, which is so the joke actually is, he goes, every day I've got to tell this guy that his wife died. And then the result, which is the punchline, which is very funny. I'm not going to give it away, but so jokes are kind of like little stories, and I see how it relates the same way. How can you enhance almost any story? First of all, actually, let me make that a question. Can you enhance any story? And if so, how would we do that?
Yeah, you can enhance any story that is out there. Now, let me give you maybe first one strategy, and you can then let me know if you want another one. Let's say I talked about that emotions matter a lot for any story, right? Especially if it's your story, there should be some emotions involved in your story. Now, my favorite technique to add emotions to any story, that's adding the inner dialogue or the thoughts. We all have thoughts throughout the day, right? Constantly. A lot of these are anxious thoughts. We're thinking about the million things that could go wrong. In your story, especially in the challenge, share some of these thoughts, right? What is going on in your mind? Let me give you an example. If I share a story right now about a presentation that went really bad, instead of just saying, that presentation went really bad, I can say, oh man, that was terrible, right? Now everyone will think that I'm a failure. I should probably move continent right now. Right? Just I share some maybe a little bit exaggerated thoughts. Or you could even do that at the beginning and setting the context already. You could say, this presentation will go incredible. I will rehearse every single line. People will look at it and they will see like, wow, Philip, this is so cool. When can you start working here? Right? I share some of these thoughts that are going on in my mind. Maybe a little bit exaggerated if you want to, optional, but that way you make it immediately more emotional.
By making it personal.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay, great. And Jason says Anthony Jeselnik's delivery is amazing. It is. He's one of those comedians where you never ever, you said surprise as part of serve. You never see the joke coming. You get to the punchline and it's like, where did he come up with that? It's brilliant. So you say that storytelling can be used for a number of things to build trust, to stand out or differentiate yourself, and to boost sales. And being that we're a group of salespeople, we all want to boost sales. In sales, we need to establish and then develop a relationship of trust with people. And finding a way to differentiate from your competitors is almost always a good thing. Why does this matter? Why does storytelling matter in sales?
Yeah. A few reasons, but let me walk you through one of the reasons that I often say. It's, imagine you have right now, you're pitching your product, right? You're doing this typical thing like, we're the market leader for XYZ. We invest 10% of our budget on R&D. We are blah, blah, blah. We use a lot of these arguments to sell ourselves. But then ask yourself, do you think that any of your competitors says anything different? At the end, we're all the market leader in something, right? So your competitors will say exactly the same. And so when you try to use arguments, do you really think that you will be remembered? Do you think that your prospect will remember you a day later, a week later, a month later? Probably not, right? And so for that, you want to have a story, an emotional story that makes them remember you.
So one way to be remembered by your prospect is by using stories. Okay, got it. And we were chatting before we got started. I was saying, I can remember songs from when I was 10 years old, even though, that was over 50 years ago. I can remember every word because music, songs tell a story. But I have to look at my driver's license every morning just to remember my own name. So stories make it sticky, right?
Yeah. And on this one, I know often we have people, everyone says, I'm super number driven. I'm super analytical. Sure. Hey, me too. I'm also numbers driven, right? But think, yes, do you remember any numbers from when you are 5 years old? Do you remember any numbers when you're 13 years old? Why not, right? We forget them if it's a week later. But if it's an emotional event, that's usually how stories work. If it's an emotional event, either pleasant or unpleasant, we remember it.
Got it. So we all know that in sales, it's not good to knock your competition or say bad things about them. How can we use stories to differentiate ourselves?
Yeah. To differentiate yourself, I think it often makes sense to first think about, hey, what is actually the claim that we want to make? And that could be, we value integrity, or I put the customer first, or blah, 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 right? What is the claim that you want to make? And then once you have that claim, go into your past experience and think, is there a specific moment in time in your past where you have a story that could back up that claim? Let's say if your claim is that you always put the customer first, is there another experience with another customer in the past where you actually did a million things to put that customer first? Well, that's your story then. So instead of just trying to differentiate yourself through arguments, look for specific experiences in the past to differentiate yourself.
Got it. Okay. So other than differentiating ourselves, how do we use storytelling in a sales conversation?
Yes. Let's make it very concrete so that everyone that is watching right now can start doing it today. One story type that I absolutely love is, because it's so simple but so powerful, are connection stories. What are connection stories? Connection stories are short personal stories that just show a little bit more about yourself. Let me give you 2 examples. One, bad way, how 99% of the people do it, and then another one, how you could do differently. Bad example. Jeff, ask me, how are you, please?
Philip, how are you?
Good. Yeah, weather today is pretty shitty in Amsterdam as always, but hey, it's okay. Right. Then I talk a little bit more maybe about the weather. I ask you how's the weather in New York. But hey, that's 99% of our small talk, right? Usually we focus on weather, traffic, weekend plans, all these topics that, hey, they're not bad, but let's just be honest, they're standard. And with standard, you're staying at the same level of relationship. So let's do another one. Jeff, do you want to ask me again, how are you? So it doesn't feel too
Sure.
awkward.
Hey, Philip, how are you today?
Okay. Jeff, I'm really good. Well, got to take that back. Right before our meeting today, I had a meeting with a prospect, and that was someone from my undergrad time. And usually I'm pretty confident, but somehow in this moment I was just getting so nervous, and somehow my 18 years old, very very unconfident me came out again. Anyhow, when was the last time that you got very nervous in front of another audience, and how was that for you? You don't need to respond there. Um, that was from today, so that wasn't planned or anything. But you see, anytime that someone asks you, "How are you?" you can choose to respond with something about yourself, something that shows a little bit more character, something that is a little bit more interesting, that hopefully makes the other person remember, but also more comfortable to open up to you. And
Yeah.
so for that to work, it's very important to pick something that is relatable, right? If I ask you now, hey, when was the last time that you got nervous in front of an audience? Well, high chances is that you can probably respond with a little thinking. You can probably respond with the story yourself, right? So you want to always pick a question where the other person can respond in some way or the other. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It makes perfect sense, because when I asked you the first time how you were, it was kind of just a standard answer, like a throwaway, yeah, I'm okay, or, nothing. But with the second one, where you started telling me the story, I found myself actually leaning in going, oh, I want to hear the end of this. I want to hear what's going on for him. So I get it. What did you call that story? A relation story?
A connection story.
Connection story. But you actually have 5 types of sales stories, and that's only one of them, right? What are the other 4?
Yeah, another one would be industry stories, and that's very much, it's, I would say, the least story type of all of them. This is more when you say, hey, I've talked to now 10 different companies, and these are the trends or the challenges that I've observed that all of these companies face. So that's very much to help just your buyer understand some of the pain points that are going on in the industry. These are industry stories. The other one is success story. That's probably the most common one, and probably most people are aware of that. That's really about a happy customer that you helped overcome a major problem and achieve these desired results. That's success stories. I'd say most common one, but very powerful ones, just because most people still don't do it that well. And then differentiation stories we talked about. That's very much about, hey, how can I make a claim and how can I actually back that claim up with a story? And then the last one is resistance story. So that's thinking before, hey, what are some of the objections that come up? What are some of the objections that come up? If it's, hey, you're too expensive, we don't have the budget, and then think, similar to success stories, is there a moment in the past where a similar customer had a similar concern, but where it all turned out fine? And that's then the story, the resistance story that you want to bring in.
Love that. And I've been teaching salespeople to tell what you're calling success stories. I call them verbal truth stories, but same thing. The prospect has a built-in resistance to buying because of the way brain science works. We want to protect ourselves from making a bad decision. And a success story, as you call it, helps them to lower their own resistance and fear to making that bad decision. I tell one in every sales process, and I recommend that salespeople do, because that's what helps people become more comfortable when they're hearing, oh, somebody else had a similar challenge. Somebody else like me had a similar challenge, and Jeff was able to help them work it out, or Philip was able to get them past it. Maybe it's okay if I work with Philip also. Maybe I won't be making a bad decision. I wasn't really aware of the others, but that's great stuff. So I do have a question, and this is from the book, because when I tell a success story, I'm the hero of the story. But you actually say we need to make the customer the hero of the story. How do we do that?
Yeah. So instead of telling the story like, hey, I was there, I did this, I did this, I did this, talk to us with the customer, in what situation the customer was, what problems the customer had, and what the customer then did to overcome that problem. Sure, with your help, but you are more of the guide. I think Nancy Duarte said that at one point. You're like you're Yoda, right? You're not Luke Skywalker. You're just the guide that helps your customer solve their problem. And so always, especially when you share success stories, think about telling it. Sure, it's still from your perspective, but the protagonist is the customer.
So instead of me, let me make sure I understand this, because I may have been doing this wrong for a long time. So instead of me saying, so I worked with this company, they had a similar, their salespeople couldn't get appointments, they couldn't close business, blah, blah, blah. I did this, that, and the other thing, and sales went up. Instead of that, it's like, well, we worked together for 3 months, and over that time, we did this, that, and the other thing, and they were able to increase their sales by X. Is that what you're saying? Does that make them the hero of the story instead of me?
I'd say more. Not sure if I understood the difference, but let me give you an example. Let's say I would say, instead of saying, or if I put you as the hero, I would say, hey, 2 years ago I was working with that client, and that client came into my meeting room and he said, hey, Philip, everything right now in these processes is just not working. Everything is completely messed up. Can you help me with that? I looked a little bit into that, and I asked him a few more questions. So I tell it a little bit more from a neutral perspective instead of just my perspective. So put us almost at the same level.
Got it. Okay. Looks like I've got to change a few things. So one of the things we want to do when we're telling a story is we want to make sure that the prospect gets it. So how do we make sure that our stories land with the prospect?
Yeah. On this one, so first, one thing, coming back to your one point that you made before, also of bringing down the resistance, what you can always do, don't think that you have to tell the story in one go. What you can actually do, you can break up your story. So let's say if we talk about a customer success story, instead of just having now this 3-minute monologue, I could say something like, Jeff, would it be helpful if I shared what challenge a similar customer was facing? And then you say, yeah, sure, share with me. And then I share the challenge. Once I share the challenge, I say, hey, would it be interesting if I share with you how that customer overcame that problem? And then you say, yeah, go ahead. And then I go into overcoming. So you can actually break it up. Don't think that you have to tell this in one go. It takes a lot of pressure off you, and it makes it more like a conversation instead of just this, here's the truth. That's one thing. The other thing is, simplify your story crazy, right? I analyzed all the stories that were interviewed people, and I realized, and I classified them by the stories that I enjoyed a lot. I thought, wow, great story. What I realized, that the average sales story can be understood by a 5th grader. So very young, right? They use simple words, they use short sentences. They don't use any foreign words. So when you share your story, the easier you can share it, the better it is. So almost think, hey, would my daughter, would my nephew right now, would they understand my story? Would they be like, what's going on here, right? Would they actually be intrigued about your story? Then you've landed a phenomenal story.
Got it. So simple is better. That's actually usually a challenge for me, and I'm glad you said that, because like most trainers and professional speakers and comedians, I love the sound of my own voice, and I tend to make stories too long. In fact, I work with somebody else. I just finished writing a 30-minute comedy set all about selling, which I plan to market to large organizations. And I've been working with a professional writer, and everything I come up with, he goes, "Oh my God, there's way too many words in there. You got to take out most of what you," because I like a long story, but the audience, it doesn't matter what I like. It matters what the audience wants to hear, what the recipient, who you're selling to also. Got it. Okay. Something else that's important in sales is, we are typically meeting with somebody who we've never met before. Maybe we've spoken with them on the phone, or maybe we meet them first on Zoom. But we always want to make a good first impression, because it's hard to overcome a bad one. How does storytelling help us to leave what you call magical first impressions?
Yeah. On that one, I'd say the connection story that I just shared, I think this is a key ingredient to leaving a magical impression. But actually, one thing that I want to share that is not 100% related to storytelling, but I think just life, the more you can enjoy yourself, the more you can leave magical impressions. And I always heard that right before. It's like, you have to have fun yourself. You have to be passionate, and never sunk. But recently, or the last few months, I realized the more fun you can have yourself and the more passion you have, the other person is like, wow, if he or she cares so much about that thing and enjoys it so much, it must be really good stuff. And so I think this is just the key to any conversation. How can you show your passion or how much fun you have? That way, it will be very easy to leave a great impression wherever you are.
Yeah, I completely agree. Passion sells.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I've coached salespeople, like when they're developing a script for cold calling and they're
Mhm.
delivering it. I'm like, you need a little more passion. I mean, you don't have to be over the top. You don't have to be a radio DJ. You don't have to be, hey, it's Jeff in the morning, news and traffic next. You don't have to be that guy. But
Yeah.
passion is contagious, just like enthusiasm and excitement is
Mhm.
contagious.
Yeah.
And what I usually do is I'll ask them, tell me about something you are passionate about. Is it sports? Is it religion? Whatever it is. And once you can get them talking about that, that
Mhm.
you can see it in somebody's eyes and you can hear it in their voice when they're passionate.
Mhm.
I usually stop and go, there, that right there. That's what you're looking to do when you're selling. And look, I've sat in audiences a million times with trainers and coaches and speakers of all types. And it's the ones that are passionate about what they're talking about, where you can feel they're really excited. They love telling you the story and you become part of it. Those are the ones that stick in your mind the best. Yes?
That's it. That's it. Beautiful.
Got it. Yeah. Jason Collins is saying passion is key. Uh, Good morning, Don Levine. Good morning, Tony Volpe. And somebody is saying, make it more like a conversation. Shouldn't all sales encounters be a conversation? Isn't that how we build relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. And so that's, I think, the what people often forget when it's about storytelling. They speak normal, 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 and then, oh, once upon a time, they go into this storytelling mode, right? And it should always be a conversation where you're just, hey, you know what? Something similar happened to a friend or a customer. Would it be cool if I shared that real quick? Right? The more casual, the more you can weave it into your normal stuff communication, the better the story in a sales context. Obviously, keynote, very different setup.
Yep, absolutely. And Jason says, side note, we need more of Jeff's radio voice. We'll give that to you later, Jason. Don't worry. Next, coming up next is Oprah Winfrey with something.
Jeff,
And a story
I'm
called,
actually looking for a narrator for my book.
I'll tell you the whole thing in the radio voice. My pleasure, my friend. So one of the things I share with salespeople is that the goal that there's a sales continuum, and at the very bottom, if you take a look at a bunch of steps like stair steps that you're going to climb, at the bottom of a relationship is salesperson, and it goes up from there till you finally get to what I call trusted advisor. How does storytelling help us to establish trust and become our client's number one trusted advisor?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I guess it's mostly by helping your customer understand what is really going on in the world. Because often prospects or buyers, they have some rough sense of what is going on, but often they are not even fully aware of that. And if you just throw in some words, it still doesn't really sink. But when you can tell them exactly what major pain points other people are seeing right now in the industry, you help them make sense out of this world. And the moment that you help them understand the problems, the trends that are going on, you're becoming that trusted advisor.
Hmm. Got it. And there was something in uh, the book that I didn't quite get. What's an anticipation hook?
Yeah. Anticipation hook, that's just one short sentence that almost sells your story at the beginning. A lot of people overdo that. So I'm mindful not to go too crazy on this one, but it's just one sentence where you say, hey, this morning something really interesting happened. Or a customer reached out to me with a really crazy problem. You see, I use these words that already sell the story. I wouldn't recommend using them too much. So if you use that in one meeting, that's more than enough. But it helps to just get people excited because people are like, oh, you said really interesting. Now I want to hear, was it actually really interesting? So it's just one tiny sentence at the beginning to get them excited, to get them pay attention.
That makes perfect sense. And when you said that, I spoke to something really interesting. I'm like, oh, tell me more. I want to hear more about that. So I got you hooked me in immediately. Dennis Lombardi says, all good stuff. And other of my favorite salespeople, conversational storytelling. Yes, stories are part of the conversation. When you're storytelling, what's the difference between telling about emotions and showing emotions?
Yeah. So if I told you right now, well, Jeff, Jeff stood there shocked. It's not very exactly. It's not very visual if I just say the words, right? If I say shocked, everyone is like, okay, cool. Nothing goes on in our head. But if I say, hey, Jeff stands there with his jaw dropped, eyes wide open, you have a clear image in front of your eyes, right? And so tell the emotion is using these abstract words that are not visual. That's like disappointed, sad, blah, blah, blah. And then show the emotions is really to show how does it look on the body, on the face, how does it look physically, bring us into the scene of the story.
So we're actually painting the picture.
Yes. Also in this one, same with anticipation hook, because I know some people are overdoing it then, right? Sure, if you're telling that grand story at a story slam, you can paint the picture a lot. But I'd say, especially in the sales context, maybe one or two of these moments can be enough. If, let's say, in the main challenge, you bring in one moment where you show the emotion instead of telling, that's usually enough. You don't need to go crazy on this one.
Got it. Okay. So there was another term in the book which talk about hooks. This one hooked me, and immediately I said, I got to know more about this. What is constructive embarrassment? And why does it matter in sales? It doesn't seem like embarrassment would be a constructive thing. What is that?
Yeah. So when I bring on constructive embarrassment, everyone is like, why would I put myself on purpose in an embarrassing situation, right? We've all have had enough embarrassing things in our lives. We try to avoid it as much as possible. And so what is constructive embarrassment? It's really when you put yourself on purpose in an embarrassing situations. Example, you go out to the street right now. The next stranger that comes by, you say in a very loud voice, hello, einen wunderschönen guten Morgen, if you want to speak that in your awkward German voice. Or if you ask the next stranger for a hug, or you go into Starbucks and sit down on the floor or lie down on the floor, whatever you want, right? This is completely whatever gives you a little goosebumps or makes you a little cringe. Now, you're wondering, why does it matter for sales? Well, at the end, what happens in a lot of sales conversation? We as sellers, we're in our heads, right? We're thinking about all the things that, what do I ask next? How do I pitch my product? We're all in our heads because we feel that we're being judged, right? We cannot be in the present moment. The moment that you put yourself into these embarrassing situations, you learn how to be present, stay with your emotions. And if something is stressful, well, it just comes in and you're like, hey, it's all right. I can deal with that. So by learning how to deal with stress, with judgment in these situations, it's very easy to deal with them in any work environment. So think about it. You can be then present in any sales conversation. Stress, you'll feel something, but it's much more tolerable. So it's a powerful exercise. Yes, it's awkward for sure. It's not for everyone, but I've seen my clients unlock the biggest results by doing that.
I see. So when I saw the term, I thought of constructive embarrassment, constructive criticism. So I'm criticizing somebody else constructively. So I'm not telling somebody else to be embarrassed. I'm actually saying something embarrassed about myself, which makes me more human. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore more relatable too.
For sure.
It's kind of like self-deprecating humor.
Mm-hmm. Also, yep.
Got it. Okay, good. We've all listened to people, at least I certainly have, telling boring stories that seem to go on forever and ever, and you want to shoot yourself. You want to poke your ears out with red hot pokers. I think you said earlier that we need to simplify our stories so that they're better received on the other end. But how simple should they be? How short should our stories actually be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also analyzed the stories that I enjoyed a lot when it comes to sales storytelling, and the best stories that were between 1 and 2 minutes, about 1.5 minutes long. And so these are very short stories. They're not long stories. I know often we think like, I need to tell this TED talk, but especially in sales, you want to have a very short story. And if the buyer is actually interested and want to hear more, well, they will ask. So keep it very short. And how can you do that? It's actually 3 things. One, cut the context, right? We're giving way too much context. We're like, this is how the production process works. This is all the details about the plant you didn't need to know. So I'd say most of the stories, 99% of them have too much context. So cut the context. Second one, eliminate the side characters. We're often telling the stories with all these different side characters. We're like, and then the taxi driver, Jeff, said this and this, and then my boss walked up, this and this. We have all these million side characters. And you should just ask yourself, do I really need these side characters, right? Most of the stories, they're usually enough if it's either you yourself or then a second, let's say the client. But don't think that you have to have 5 side characters. They just add extra complexity. And then last one, just focus on the crucial moments. Instead of saying, hey, I did these million things to overcome the challenge, focus on 1 or 2 things that really change the needle. Yes, we always want to be truthful, but for stories, you want to make it digestible as well, right? So focus on the big things that really matter. So make it digestible for your audience instead of just bringing in 1,000 things, okay?
Yeah. So I have a friend named Gene. I love the guy, and he tells stories. You sit with this guy, all you're going to do is hear stories, and 90% of the time, we're about 3 minutes in, and I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? Because he starts out with a premise, then it goes way down the line. So is that what you're talking about? How do you stay on track? How do you give the salient points without giving all that side stuff? Because I mean, he's a dear friend, and usually about 5 minutes in, I'll go, "What the hell are you talking about? I have no clue what you're doing." And he'll laugh at himself. He goes, "I don't know either. I'm just making it up as I go along." So are stories something we can make up on the spot, or do they need to be prepared in advance?
Yeah, with practice, you can make them up on the spot. One practice that I think is very powerful that people should start doing this. The first 2 years when I started my career, I improvised a story every single day. Now, all of you know right now with the structure that I'm using. And what I did there, I just went online, random topic generator. Boom, random topic, something, I don't know. Then it was, let's say, a candle in New York. Oh, boom. And I just make up the story on the spot. That way I train myself to tell stories on the spot and actually start using the structure, start using the elements so that I can do that actually in the moments where it matters. Now, first I did that with random topics, but after some time I moved into then real life stories. So one exercise that is actually very powerful, what I suggest for everyone to try out, is called the homework for life. I didn't come up with that. That's Matthew Dix, the author of Storyworthy. It's a phenomenal book on personal storytelling. And so his suggestion is every single day, you sit down and you reflect upon the one story-worthy moment of the day. And that could be anything that touched your heart, anything that stood out a little bit, anything that was a little bit special, right? What you do then is you note down the date, you note down the story-worthy moments, that's maybe a sentence, and if you want to, a lesson, but it doesn't have to have a lesson. Now, when you do that at the beginning, it's like, today I went to work and I had lunch. It's super boring. But why? Because we're not trained. We haven't trained our mind to spot these story-worthy moments. What do you see after doing that for a few weeks? You see story-worthy moments in every moment, right? You walk through the streets. There's so many beautiful moments that touch your heart and that you might as well use for your business conversations. So give it a try. It will give you a pool of stories that you can start using, one, and it will just make you more present, more mindful in the day-to-day. It's a beautiful exercise that I still do until today.
Yeah, I used to play a game with my children when they were young. We'd be out somewhere and I'd just point to somebody and make up a story about them and tell them, what do you think? What about that person? And, to develop those storytelling skills. But one of the things in sales, if we're going to have certainly success stories, we have to have those stories prepared because they have to have happened to us. How do do you have any advice for how do you take a story that possibly you've told hundreds and hundreds of times and make it seem like it's brand new? Because the prospect doesn't want to be bored. Yeah, I did this and I did that. I've told the story 400 times. How do you make it fresh every time? Is there a method for doing that?
Yeah. The method is probably the more you can be in the story yourself, the better it is. That sounds a little bit abstract because at the beginning we're just like, I need to deliver the story. No. We're just completely in our heads. But the goal is really that you relive that story. So it should be like, say, 2 years back, I stand in this apartment. just finishing up that call. And I should see exactly what I do in this exact moment. Like, it should almost be that as if I was forgetting the customer right now. I'm back in the story. I relive exactly what was happening in that moment. I really relive the emotions. And when that happens, it's fresh every single time because your body just relives it, and it doesn't tell the difference between what is reality and what is if it's a past experience.
Yeah, I've often advised salespeople that you have to know your stories and your scripts, if you're going to use scripts, so well that you can do them in your sleep. And only when you know them that well can you then act as if you're making them up.
Mhm.
Inserting a pause or an or an
Yeah.
because nobody wants to hear a script. Uh, you know,
Mhm.
I,
Yeah.
I live in New York, which has Broadway, and we all know that when we go to the theater, there is a script, but it doesn't seem like it because the actors act as if they're really in the role and making it up on the spot.
Yeah. But interesting that you say that as well. I think I'm a big fan of rehearsing your stories. I think everyone should do that. But what I like about storytelling, don't think that it has to be the super polished, perfect story, right? If you want to have a few um, in there, doesn't matter, right? It just makes it a little bit more human. The same thing actually applies to anything that you do, right? If you share video, instead of having this perfect video, it's completely fine if you look away. If you have like short moment where you're thinking, that's fine, right? Doesn't matter. It just makes you more human. I hate this anytime that I hear this advice, like, oh, in this moment you should raise your hand like this to make the point, or you should stand in this exact position. No, fuck that, right? At the end, it's about you want to show this human connection and you want to be yourself. And just the moment that you enjoy yourself, you can say as many M's as you want. I'm not a big fan of timing that or thinking that you have to speak in a certain way. Storytelling is very casual, and if you have a few M's, doesn't matter.
Got it. You actually have a bunch of suggestions for both do's and don'ts in building confidence and telling stories. And
Mhm.
one of them went completely against what I was taught. My stepfather was a career salesperson. He taught me take your stories, rehearse them in the mirror. But you say you should not be doing that. Why should we not rehearse in the mirror?
Yeah, that's such a interesting one, right? Because everyone keeps saying that, right? Everyone is like, just rehearse in front of the mirror, and then think about it. When will you ever be in the situation that you speak in front of an audience and you see yourself while speaking? Does that ever happen?
Not
Never,
unless there's
right?
a mirror at the back of the room.
It's completely unnatural. So the only thing that you accomplish by doing that is that you get more self-conscious. You're like, what is that? Ooh, I didn't know that I had many wrinkles down there. So you're just getting more self-conscious. And there's just no point. There are other techniques, much more powerful ones, but rehearsing in front of a mirror, it's the biggest myth, but also the least helpful that is out there.
Wow. Well, I want to come back to more do's and don'ts in a second, but now I'm going to tell you a story. So, at one point, I had left New York and moved back to Chicago, where I grew up, and I was actually living with my parents for a while. And I took a job in sales, and I was very proud of myself. I had rehearsed my pitch, and I said, "Dad, would it be okay if I gave you my presentation?" He goes, "Absolutely, kid." And I sat down and I started giving him my presentation. And I was maybe 2 minutes into it. We're sitting in the living room. He's on the couch, and I'm in a chair sitting across from, like we're in a sales conversation. And we're about 2 minutes in. And he goes, "Go in the bathroom and give yourself your own pitch in the mirror." I'm like, "No, I want your feedback from you." He goes, "That's my feedback. Go in the bathroom and look in the mirror and give yourself the presentation." So I did because I trusted my stepfather. And what I noticed was that, which is obviously why he sent me to do it in the mirror, was that I kept on doing this with my eyebrow. I call it the Spock eyebrow, the Mr. Spock eyebrow. I kept on doing that. And I actually walked out of the bathroom. I said, "Was it the eyebrow?" He goes, "Yeah, what the F is that?" Well, he didn't say F. He goes, "What the F is that?" But to me, that was the purpose of rehearsing in the mirror so that you can see what you look like to the prospect. I agree with you. You don't see yourself, but is there any value in seeing that? Because to me, body language is important.
Yes.
Rather than having the prospect focus on my weird eyebrow, I'd rather have them focus on the conversation.
Yeah, I love the story. It's a beautiful one, and I love the how you impersonated your grandfather. No,
My
stepfather was.
stepfather, yes.
On this one,
By the way,
yes,
that was a pretty good impersonation. He was a tough guy.
it's a great one. Now, there's a lot of value of seeing yourself, but there's one better one. What the better way is if you just speak into a camera or you record yourself on your phone and then you watch it after. I hate it. I hate it, right? I look at myself and I'm like, oh no, this is not good. But it's powerful. It's really powerful stuff. And there, it's a little bit more natural. It's obviously not natural because you're still talking into camera, but at least you're not seeing yourself. So it is very powerful, and I suggest to do that. It really tells a lot. I noticed at one point, and I probably still do that a lot, that I use a lot of facial gestures. And I think there I learned that I need to tone that down a little bit just by watching myself on video.
Got it. What are some of the other do's and don'ts associated with building confidence when telling stories?
Okay. Um, one, one don't. Well, let's start with the do's. I cannot think right now about the don'ts. The do's is one thing that I love to do is let's say I stand up in my room and I just pick random objects that are my audience, and that is the water glass, my cell phone, my light, and then I just move from one object, deliberately finish one thought before then moving to the next object. And now, why does it matter? Well, and say it's often true we have one-on-one conversations, but eye contact is so important. And if you're just somewhere floating around the space, you cannot have the same connection, the same trust as if you have deliberate eye contact. It's not to mean that you have to stare all the time into the camera. No, it's much more about making some points deliberate into someone else's eye.
So you're
And so,
you're making a connection there.
yeah. Mhm.
Again, before you go on, I have to relate that to comedy because I know you've taken classes like I have, and you've studied, and perhaps you've done it. But when I'm on stage performing comedy, typically there are spotlights
Mhm.
on you, and usually they're blinding. You can usually only see the first couple of people, maybe the first couple of rows. But I'm always looking around because I was trained to do this as a speaker and as a comedian. You want to look around because you're trying to make it at least seem like you're making eye contact with
Mhm.
everybody, even though
Mhm.
you can't even see them, because that
Mhm.
helps them. That kind of sucks them in too. Yes,
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
got you. Do you have some
Um,
other do's for us about what we should do?
yeah. Another one, and this is I would say more for presentation right now, not for storytelling so much, but I think it's an interesting one. Um, you don't only have to rehearse in your room. You can go anywhere. One thing that I do often when I rehearse my stories or presentations, I walk through the street while speaking out loud. And yeah, it's awkward. People are like, oh, what's going on with that guy? Crazy guy. I know. Actually, we don't have that many crazy people in the street, but
We do here.
I know. I didn't want to say that. Um, that's not coming across well. But one thing that you can also do, what I did, for example, when I gave that TED talk, I often struggle that my voice is not loud enough. And so what I did before giving that TED talk, that I went into the park, I picked myself a tree. And that was like 10 meters or 30 feet away. And I just started giving that presentation or TED talk to that tree that was so far away. And yeah, awkward people passing by thinking, why is this crazy person screaming at that tree? But that just helps you speak with a more confident, with a higher voice. And so that's one if you're more looking into presentations, actually.
I love that, and I actually do that. I didn't realize that I was doing a do for you, but um, hang on. Yeah, I just had to make sure. He's behind me, so I'm going to have to spell this. In the morning when I WALK, the DOG, if I had said it, he would have jumped up just now, it's not time for that. But when I'm doing that, I often will give myself a comedy routine that I'm going to be performing that night out
Mhm.
loud with a smile on my face, making expressions, talking out loud. And I'm pretty sure my neighbors think I'm out of my mind because I walk through the streets talking to myself constantly. But yeah, that's a great way to rehearse.
Mhm.
We're running out of time, but there were a couple of other things that I've learned about you that I'm just fascinated by and don't know what they are. Your website says that you like to move your hips at bachata parties. What's a bachata party?
Bachata is this dance from Dominican Republic that is, let's say, salsa, but I'd say more sensual if you want to simplify it as much. And especially here in Europe, it's starting to get very, very big. It's a very sensual dance. It's great building a connection. It's super fun. And I just not every single night, but I would say every second night or so, you'll find me on a bachata party here in Amsterdam. I just love it. It helps me to just forget about the day, be in the moment, feel a connection to other people. And it's just, yeah, I think it's such an enrichment to my life.
I love that. And there was something else that I didn't understand. I've heard of volleyball, but you're into spike ball. What's spike ball?
Yeah, spike ball, that's actually very big in the States. Here in Europe, it's still pretty small. And so spike ball, I discovered it during my MBA. It's where you put this net in the middle and you spike a small ball on it. You play 2-on-2, and you have 3 touches to get it on, to smack it on the net. And it's actually pretty big in the States already. And here, I wanted to continue doing that because here it was still a pretty recent sport. And I thought, hey, this might be my only chance ever to participate at something at the national level. And actually, I participated in the Dutch championship, I think 2 years back. And so I thought, hey, this is my only chance ever to play in the national league for a sport. And so I did that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I've never heard of spike ball, although there's something right now that's very big. It's called pickleball.
Pickleball, what's that?
I'm not quite sure. It's played with a net. It looks kind of like tennis to me, but it's a much shorter court, and they're using a solid racket, and the ball is clearly different. I'm not sure what the rules are, but it looks kind of like tennis on a much smaller court. It is everywhere right now, and people are loving it. People are all over Facebook. Who wants to play pickleball with me? Got it. Let's see.
Thanks for sharing this. I might introduce that here. Now I can be this pioneer in the
pickleball. It's called pickleball, like pickle, the thing that you eat. Let's see. Dennis Lombardi says showing some vulnerability in the right way can be a strength. That's great. Hi, Jeff and Philip. Jumped on a bit late. Well, Facebook user, hi to you too, whoever you are. And Ben Gibson, another of my favorite salespeople, also says he's late. Hello. Well, hello to you too. Any final tips for telling better stories?
Yeah, my final tip is, hey, just get started, right? What I did when I started off, I always thought like, I need to tell this perfect story, I need to have this in this best shape. And trust me, when you've already started thinking a little bit about your story, you're probably already better than 99% of the stories that are being told out there. So my suggestion is just, hey, just give it a go, right? Give it a go. Don't try to look for perfection, because the more you can just get into the habit, hey, tell a story to your daughter, to your wife, to the Uber driver, to whoever is out there. The more you train that muscle, the more natural it will feel in your sales conversation, and the more fun you can have with that. And yeah, obviously, if you want to check out my new book, that would be incredible. It has been out since last week. And yeah, so far, really happy. It's #1 release in a few categories. So check it out. And everything that I talked about today is covered in there. So I think that could give you a lot of value as well.
Yeah, it's a great read. Thank you for sending it to me. It's a great read. And the other thing I like about it is it's an easy read. I get annoyed with books that are teaching you either difficult or easy concepts, but they make it very difficult. You make it very simple. You lay it out. Your instructions are clear, and you have exercises at the end of each chapter. I'm actually sharing my screen right now. Can you tell people how to get in touch with you if they're looking to work with you, or if they want to buy the book?
Yes, for sure. So easiest, I'm the most active on LinkedIn. I pretty much post there almost every day. So connect with me. I'd love to have you in my network. Then second, check out my book, The Story Selling Method. It's right now available on Amazon. Check out my website, powerofstorytelling.com. That's another one. And then lastly, just send me an email. Either way, say hi. We'd love to hear about your storytelling journeys wherever you are in the world. I'm always curious about others there.
Fantastic. Wait, there's one more before we go. Michael Norse, he's the talent whisperer, and he loves the concept of storytelling with a moral or with the intention to educate or highlight a unique talent. Yes, an incredibly wonderful recruiter has helped me more than once find great talent for my clients. Well, Philip, this has been fascinating. I love storytelling, and I love hearing about it. Thank you so much for sharing your brilliance with us generously today. And I will end as I always do, gang. Please remember that not only is it the end of the quarter, but we still have a long way to go. And sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks again, Philip. Have a great weekend.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.